Well, I think we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. This is a Basecamp being produced by the Institute for Conservation Leadership for Highstead Foundation and the RCP network. And we're just delighted that you're with us. We are going to put you to work right away. We would love for you to add your name, where you are physically, and RCP. We do have some staff who are with us, so feel free to add that if you're Highstead staff. And we'd love to know what you're looking forward to learning today. Dawn and I will do our best in the 90 minutes that we have together to cover what you're learning, as well as to share the things that we are planning to share. And if you don't have it up yet, I want to encourage you to open your Basecamp app, or if you're doing Basecamp on the web, we'd encourage you to have Basecamp open the whole time. We're going to be using Basecamp as we go, so that it's a real live practice session. So looking for comments in chat. Who's out there? Who's joining us today? What do you want to learn? The Hudson Valley. So many beautiful spots in the world that we all have a chance to be in. Thanks, Bill. I'd like to know what I don't know. That is often the case. There are things we know we want to know, and then there are things we don't know that might be helpful. Excellent. Oh, a brand new person to the platform. Joy and I, or Dawn and I, hope to really share and give you some purchase so that you can really get into the platform and use it. Good questions about what would the Basecamp tool be useful for. General overview, we're definitely covering that today. Moving back, basics. New tools, eagerness, yay. Okay. Well, Dawn and I would like to start by telling you what we're up to today. We have a wonderful 90 minutes with you. I've already encouraged you, and I'll encourage you again to keep your Basecamp open. We think to introduce Basecamp, which is our main aim, one of the best ways to do that is to get you right in it and have you work with it, as opposed to hearing a lecture or watching us do things on screen. It's always been one of my things that I hate about tech. Like, people like, here, watch me, I'll do it. And then you don't learn it that way. Anyways, we are focused today on communication and collaboration tools on Basecamp. We're not showing you everything, but we feel like these are most applicable to any small group that's doing work together, but especially to your RCPs and the collaborative efforts that you're doing. It has a lot of features, and we're going to hone in on a couple so that we can dive into those and do the hands-on experience. And throughout, we want to be telling stories and having you reflect on what kind of value might this tool add to you. So the agenda today is a rockin' one. We're going to just push right through it. We're going to start with one of the tools that we think is most useful, which is message threads, and how to use message threads effectively and thoughtfully. We know from working with people that adjusting notifications is really critical, so that you are getting the information you need from Basecamp when you're not on it, and getting alerts, but not getting so much. We're going to share a case study of a collaboration that the Institute for Conservation Leadership, Dawn and I, have worked with, and just use it to illustrate some of the features in Basecamp that we're sharing. Basecamp has another feature called Docs and Files, which allows you to store things, and we want to make sure we cover that. If we have time, we want to introduce you to the fun world of pings. If we don't, we will find another way to share that with you. And then we want to close by having you think a little bit with us and us sharing how to help other people adopt a tool that you're going to have a chance to learn. But there's a trick, I think, to getting others to join you in the dance of Basecamp. So with that, I'm going to turn things to Dawn, who's going to dive right in to what we know about this group and how we might support your learning today.
Thanks, Diane. And I'm really pleased to be here with you. All of you who registered for this call, which is everyone here, shared a little bit of your familiarity with Basecamp. And you can see here we have a good mix in the room, veering a little bit more towards people who are newer to the tool. Maybe you've logged in once or twice, or you've never used it at all. Even for the folks who use it regularly, I think you're all going to get something that you can apply out of today's session. We also heard from you that between meetings, you're primarily using email to stay in touch. That includes, regular individual email, but also email lists. Some of you are using MailChimp, some of you are using Google Groups or other listserv tools. And a couple of you are using Basecamp and Google Drive to stay in touch. But really those are, you aren't using a lot of these kinds of tools. So, as we come in today, why bother adding another tool to your belt? What is the value of this? Well, Diane and I really do work with a lot of different networks in a lot of different contexts, and we've seen the great value of distributing communication and creating platforms, multiple platforms for people to find each other, to be in touch in different ways, and to relieve the pressure from a hub and spoke model where it puts a lot of weight on maybe one person to distribute information and to communicate and keep people connected. It gives people the power to do that themselves. This can in turn increase the equity and the inclusion in your network because people can find each other, they can be in touch and check in. It increases their participation and activity. And for you as a leader in the network, it gives you a chance to listen to folks who might be traditionally on the edges, who might not be speaking up loudly or might not be participating in the way that others are, but have a lot to share and have a lot of value to bring to your network. It also brings the great value of spending less time looking for things, digging through long emails or messy folders, and spending more time doing things. So we hope you'll all get value out of this. So as Diane said, there's a lot of features on Basecamp. And I heard one of you mention in the chat function project management. That's definitely a feature that Basecamp offers. It's not one we're going to cover today. So if that's something that you are interested in learning more of, I encourage you to check out the wonderful tutorial videos you can find on Basecamp.
Oh, are you on the web? Am I supposed to be on there?
And today we're going to be really focusing in on the tools that offer collaboration and communication features within Basecamp to help increase that participation in your RCPs. And we'll be digging into specifically message board and docs and files. All right, so we're going to do a quick poll. Everybody learns differently. Even in this circle, I'm sure we have many different learning styles. If you were to just kind of pick one, when you're presented with a new technology or tool, what's your first instinct? Do you tend to dive right in, start playing? Do you prefer to read through the instruction manual? Are you a phone a friend person? What's your first instinct? Lots of votes coming in. I'll give everyone a chance to answer. Welcome to those of you who just joined. Hopefully the polls popped up for you too and you can participate. Just need a couple more responses and I'll close our poll. What's your instinct when you're presented with a new technology or tool? All right, let's see. It looks like this is great. We have a majority here who really like to dive in and start playing. So we'll make sure to give you a chance to do that. A couple of you do like to read through the instruction manual, and we're here to offer those clear instructions as we go. And we're also here to be a friend when you need an extra support, and we'll share at the end kind of how you can keep in touch with us and ask us questions as you start really applying these lessons after today's meeting. So again, we'll try to meet all of these different learning styles, and grateful that you're all here. All right, so we're going to begin with some practice, as Diane said, on messages, comments, and boosts. In preparation for today's meeting, we reached out to some folks that we work with on Basecamp in a collaboration, and asked if they could just share their recommendations, their advice for you all today. And they were very honest and open about their feedback. So we have some good real world advice sprinkled throughout today's presentation. This first one is from Laura Tesseri, and she shares the value she sees in the first tool we'll talk through, messages. I'll let you read her quote. So threaded messages, why bother using them in Basecamp versus, as Laura said, digging through your email to find all the documents you need for a meeting. When you have threaded messages, it keeps discussions in one place, and you can see the conversation build. You're not the only one out in the middle of the dance floor dancing. You can see other engagement and other things happening within the thread. How does it work? Well, it starts just like an email message. The responses come in as comments and stay within that same window. And there's two different ways you can respond. Many of you practice the boost functionality in advance of today's meeting. And we're going to practice comments in just a second. A boost is kind of like when you have text messages and you do like a thumbs up or a tap back on some tools. That response really just goes to the person who sent the message, either a comment or a message itself. The boost just gives that feedback to that individual. You can send a few characters, a thank you, this looks great, received, understood, or you can send emojis. Comments can be longer, can include attachments, images, links, more content, and they go to everyone. They're the equivalent of a reply all on an email. It's a little meatier. And so when you're sending out messages to your RCPs, you want to be really specific about the question you want people to answer in the comments, or if you just want people to acknowledge that they saw it with a boost. So what does it look like? Here's an example. A lot of times what we'll do when we use this tool is we'll post an agenda for a meeting as a message. Here you can see Diane sent one in March. And then we'll post the recording and notes as a comment to that thread. Folks can acknowledge they've received it with boosts, and that helps everyone keep up on the thread, add their action items in the same place, and have everything organized. They can see everything in one spot. Here's a comment from Patrick Starr, who said, who expresses a little bit of frustration with people mixing up the comment and boost functionality, much in the way that we often get frustrated when there's too many reply alls to an email. All right, so we're going to practice this. I'm going to do these steps, and then I'm going to invite each of you to follow exactly what I did and leave a comment. We're going to log into Basecamp, go into the messages section, and in a minute, it's not there yet, you'll see a message called RCP introductions, and you're going to add a comment there with your introduction. So you can watch me send this message first, and then you'll get a chance to log into Basecamp and do the same thing. So here we are in our Basecamp RCP Network Basecamp training group. To send a message, we click on the message board. We click new message. I happen to have drafted it already. It's here. And I'm going to send it to everyone in the project Now I'm going to hit post this message. And now it's your turn. Come find the message and leave a comment with your introduction. I'll keep this screen up. And if you're having trouble finding it or accessing the group, just unmute and shout out. We're here to help. Great job, Eve. Allison's coming in. I like the beach too. Great. Great job, Connie. Anywhere with your family. I love that. Bill picked a place and a time of the year. I love it. Linda, the forest. Mary likes to go to the mountains. We have lots of beach lovers here. Dan likes her yard. At the White Mountains, more beach. Excellent. Everyone's doing this perfectly. Well done. Amazing. Everyone pat yourself on the back. You've officially passed the first learning experience of the day. Did anyone have trouble? I do want to give you a chance to reach out if you're having trouble.
Yeah, I tried to boost someone else's comment, but I can't see how to actually send the boost. I'm doing it on my phone.
Okay, so to boost a comment, you click on the little rocket booster. You can type something short.
I didn't type anything. I see a green check mark and a red X. But when I pressed the green check mark, it didn't do anything.
So you need to put some content in the field first.
Okay, so you have to actually type something in the boost.
Correct. Yeah, you've got to put something in there. It can be an emoji or it can be some text.
Okay.
And then you should be able to hit the green check mark and it should work. Good question.
Okay.
Okay. So one quick question. My email just blew up because everybody's comments showed up in my email. So we're going to get to how to turn that off, right?
It feels like I could have paid you to say that. Thank you. That's actually coming very soon. So thank you for noticing that. And we'll be talking about that very soon, just a few minutes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And now you understand Patrick's quote even better, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Before we get to the notifications, though, Diane's going to walk us through one more aspect of messages that we really want to practice together. Diane, you want to talk us through small group messages?
Yeah, and I just have to say, everybody, Dawn is just such a joy to work with. We've had a chance to work together for multiple years on multiple projects, and this is maybe one of the most like, why didn't I think of that sort of things that she taught me and that we used with a very large product and project that we had to do. You don't have to email everybody in this group. Like if you just took our workshop group, you can create smaller groups by choosing and clicking on them. And why would you want to do that? Well, sometimes in a collaboration or in an organization, you have multiple things going on, but you want to make it an open platform. So you may not want to join that group, but you could go and peek in on what they're doing or what they're thinking about or what their dialogue is. And so small group messages in the context of a larger group help to create that kind of transparency and access for everyone. It does help keep things organized. It helps your email not blow up, depending on how you set your preferences. And it keeps the right people in the conversation as opposed to the whole group. You can always go back to the whole group thread and say, hey, take a look at what we were doing in the small group thing. If you want, it gives you just lots of flexibility to communicate with folks. And so an example of this was within a project, the Delaware River Watershed Initiative. Dawn and I had the joy of working with a small group who was tasked to look at the big picture and where the group wanted to head. And they decided that in order to do that, they needed to reach out to 5 different audiences. And so we split the group of 16 into 5 teams. And then we set up a message thread for each of those small groups. And you can see just looking at this, like audience 3 was a big deal. Like we did a lot and we had over 100 different comments and discussions back and forth. But as Dawn referenced quickly, one of the great things is we could anchor documents that we were working in the thread, recordings of several different kinds of conversations that we were having in the thread. It created an open platform for this small group, but also for the wider group to be able to go and just see what was happening in that audience. Audience 3 touched everything in the initiative, and so it was super important that they had that kind of breakout. And so just to step you through it, and then we're going to break into 2 smaller groups in just a second so that you can see this live time and we can experiment with it. But the key with a small group message is that you start the message just like Dawn showed you, but then at the bottom, Basecamp gives you this option of who do you want to notify with this message? It could be 1 other person, it could be 2. In just a minute, we're going to split this group into 2 by choosing simultaneously, we hope, choosing to split you into a breakout room on Zoom, as well as having our own small group meeting spot to think about things. And you basically just go through and click who you want to get the message, save it, and then that small group message thread is created for you to use as much or as little as you like. It could be 1 message, it could be multiple messages. And so I think with that, if all goes well here, half of you are going to go to room 1 with Dawn and half will stay here in the main room with me. And Dawn and I will both do screen share to show you, like we'll actually step it through and show you how it works in Basecamp. And then again, we'll turn to Basecamp to answer some questions together for the discussion. And we'll probably, at least I'm hoping you'll come off camera and talk as well as do this. We're gonna go for, what did we say, Dawn? We're gonna go for 10 minutes or less.
I think we said 5 minutes, but we have time to do 10 if you think that would be.
No, 5 sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad I checked with you. All right, so we're just going to split up. Half are going with Dawn, half will just stay right here. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Let me see if I can get Basecamp up here. And then do the screen share. Okay, so that was the last message. One thing Dawn didn't say, am I sharing the right one? Yes. There's like a breadcrumb trail here at the top that I find I use a lot to get back and forth to things. So if I want to go out and get to other pieces, I can do that. And then again, you just click on things. As Dawn showed you, one of the features I like in Message Board is that you can draft something and not send it. So I have gone ahead and drafted a small group message for us, this is our small group, and these are the unique questions that we're going to be discussing. And since I started it, I'm just going to hit continue editing. And down here, I think I'm just going to make sure I have everybody in the group here. Need to expand the look. There we go. So if I want to change it or check it, I can make sure I have everybody of the large group checked. Everybody see your name here as checked?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to save changes. And now only 10 people are going to see this, and I post the message. And now that should pop up in your Basecamp for you. And you can add comments here in answer to these questions. I am curious, well, maybe let's start with what other tools are you familiar with that thread your conversations and that help keep the communication with a smaller group in one place? Go ahead and either add, or if you've got things that you want to share, I can also type if you'd prefer to just talk.
Diane, I'm not sure I understand the first question. What other tools do you use that thread conversations? I can't think
Yeah. I'm just typing some in here
of
that I use.
Signal, that's a good one, yeah.
One of the things that we have noticed, so the concept of threading is that it kind of keeps things in one place so you can find the tool. You can find other comments that have been made to it. Yahoo and Outlook can thread conversations, definitely, Connie. And even as I was talking, I was thinking Google Gmail does this for you too. I'm always amazed. Our little neighborhood here in Maryland, the listserv is just popping. We get like a ton of messages a day. And I'm always grateful that Gmail, in the way I have it set up, keeps the comments in the same place as the original thing that came out of the listserv. Deleted a whole thread. Does anybody else use Slack? Slack is another tool that is often popular in the business world for threaded conversations.
It comes up as like kind of stacked.
Sorry, could you say that again? Oops. We didn't get very far in the discussion. It looks like we're going to close.
Sorry, my internet went. I think I'm better now.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Just a quick, Basecamp is different from Slack. I think, yeah, it definitely offers more tools. The docs and files function is a lot more robust in Basecamp, which is one of the reasons why we like it. Slack is primarily threaded and you can pin documents, but it doesn't have document storage per se, in my experience of using it.
May I ask a question? I think you might have just been talking about this, but in these small group messages, if we reply to somebody's comment, are we able to pin documents or link documents from our file storage?
Yeah, you can. When you send, I mean, often when Dawn and I send an agenda out, if there's a document we want people to read, we might attach it, is the term of art in Basecamp. You can also easily drop in links to Google Docs or other online tools as well.
Yeah.
So welcome back, everybody. Dawn, that 5 minutes went really fast in our breakout. I don't know
It went
about yours.
fast for us too. But I think we were talking about the same thing of what are the functionalities of comments. One person was asking, can you do kind of sub threads under the threads? You can't. You can do the short text boosts. Otherwise, you would just add a comment in the long thread. So if it's becoming very complex, you might just start a new message and start fresh. But I think everyone had enough time to leave a comment and do a little reflecting on small group communication in our group. And we also noticed how we could spy on your group and see what you all were talking about too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going back and seeing what you all talked about.
Yeah.
One other quick promo I want to say is when you're posting messages, think really thoughtfully about what your headline is going to be. We've gone to just like, if it's a meeting, we start with the date and then say what the meeting is. It just, I think for my eye and sensibility, it makes it easier to go and find things. So just like the subject line in an email matters in terms of making it easy for people to follow, we really think that heading, that subject line in the message board will make it easier to go back and find things later too. Okay.
All right. I know Lois is ready to get to this next section. Shall we dive
Yeah.
in? So for those of you who noticed your email blowing up, I think you'll appreciate this next section, which is really focused on finding that just right balance. It might be obvious why that's useful, but we've definitely heard over and over again that this is kind of the make or break feature. And if you don't find the right balance, people tend to disengage. Stephanie says it really well here in this quote. So Diane and I would really encourage you, as you're introducing Basecamp to your RCPs, to linger on the notification. Make sure people know how to find them and spend a few minutes on a meeting live adjusting them so that you get the balance that will work for people. It's actually quite easy to do. And I will walk you through the steps and show you in a second, but just to explain the steps first, you click on your profile photo in the top right corner. You click change notification settings, and then you can adjust your settings. So I'm going to show you now live on Basecamp. Okay, so here, Eve's saying that you found the same thing. If the notifications weren't right, people disengage.
Yeah, I heard that actually from a network from Santa Cruz. They said they got inundated and they just stopped using it.
Yeah. And that's really a shame because there's so much value. And I think that's why they make notification adjustments really so easy. So you don't click there. You click here on your profile photo and you'll see here, change notification settings. You can also just, if you want to you're in a meeting, you've got the app open and you don't want to close it, you can turn on focus mode and it'll just pause the notifications briefly. But this is the kind of your permanent features that you'd like. So you can select to be notified about everything or only notified when someone's directly messaging you or pinging you. You can decide how you get those notifications. You can get emails. If you turn this off, you can still get a digest of a summary of all that's happened. And you don't get an individual email for each piece of content that's here. So if you have this and this set, any comment anyone just added came to you as an individual email. If you have this and this set, you'll only get an individual email when someone pings you or messages you. And if you remove this, you'll just get a daily digest, which you can, or you can get nothing actually if you want that too. But I wouldn't recommend that. I like having the pop-up notifications when Basecamp is open because I typically will just open Basecamp when I'm ready to focus on it. And so I want to have it open and be able to catch things right away. I like to see the number of unread items. Some people find that less helpful, so you don't have to have it. And then you can set your hours. I like to set my hours and then select this option here, which this is the digest. So on Monday mornings and like 8 every morning, if something's happened after hours, I'll get a summary of what that is so I can get caught up. So this is my preferred setting here that I'm setting here. I like to just get a notification if somebody's directly messaged me. And I like to get the digests when I'm not paying attention. But everyone has a different balance that works for them. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to keep this up and I'm going to let you go on Basecamp and do the exact same steps and just shout out if you've got questions or you're bumping into trouble.
Dawn, I have kind of a question before doing this. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, my connection looks unstable.
I can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
Okay. This is going to seem like such a boomer question because I'm super used to email because that's how I came of age. And I get extremely stressed out about having a full email box, which is why like deleting emails gives me extreme satisfaction.
Yes.
But it seems like this is an application where I don't even need to worry about that. It's more about what I've seen and what I haven't seen, and I never have to delete anything. But then what happens? Is there storage or like, it just seems like the modality is so foreign to me. That's my question. Am I deleting things? Am I going to feel like it's so full that I can't wait to clean? Or am I not even thinking about that at all?
Yeah. Well, so then if you get joy from deleting things, I would recommend showing the number of unread items. Those unread items pop up here, and the equivalent of deleting is in an email box is clicking this mark as read, and then it'll give you this very satisfying message of nothing new for you. So you've completed your list. You don't need, there's no way to delete the things that are there because you want to keep them there for others. But this will keep you kind of reassured that you've seen all the things you need to see. Does that answer your question, Connie? Okay, perfect.
When you're adjusting your communication settings, would that affect all groups that you're in, or could you set them differently for different groups?
You can set it differently for different groups. And so you can, over in the, I'm only in this one here, but you can also switch to just following. This is a bit of an advanced feature. So if you're brand new to Basecamp, maybe don't worry about this one. But if you have multiple projects within Basecamp, you can have some that you're following and some that you're actively working on. So you won't get any notifications when you switch to just following. And that's a way to kind of adjust the levels within one Basecamp space if you have multiple projects happening. Did that answer your question, Christopher? You're on mute still.
Sorry, I think so. You can choose to. It sounds like there's two choices. You can choose to just follow, but then for the groups that you're not just following, you'll receive them all for the way you set them.
Exactly. You got it. Mhm. Has everyone had a chance to adjust their notification settings? I
think
see
when
some
I
thumbs
think,
up.
nope,
I
go
see some
ahead.
thumbs. Did someone raise their hands? Or is that just a thumbs up? I'm ready to
Just
move
getting
on.
thumbs up. The only thing I
okay.
would say is when Donna and I were prepping, like, I still have it set to go on my emails. I just like go through it. But the trick is, and why we really like the app is if I open the app and have it open and have it notify me, I don't need the emails, but it's a little bit of a crutch when you're, like I've used it as a crutch because I'm not always paying attention to Basecamp to have the email notifications. But you'll think about it, but you can always go back and adjust.
Jordy, what did you want to add?
Well, just a question about the digest. Is that like an email you get every morning, even if you're set just to screen notifications? How does that work?
It just notifies you of things that you've missed. Let me see if I can find one in my inbox and I can show you what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't find it, you don't need to show it to me, but it just shows you like overnight you missed these comments or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Here's this one. This group that I use Basecamp with uses it more for project management. So the email might look a little weird, but you get this email. Here's the latest activity. Here's the latest activity across everything since 7 a.m. on Thursday. And so you can see kind of docs that were added, people discussing messages, comments, things in different projects. This one's a lot more active than others, but you can kind of get a sense of what happens. It just gives you this full summary of everything that's happened since the day before.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Great questions. Well, y'all have really joined in with us and we've put you right to work. We're going to do just a quick little interlude of a story to illustrate how Basecamp looks in action. Dawn and I have had a chance for 6-7 years now to work with the Delaware River Watershed Initiative. This was created by a foundation and it includes 60 different organizations. And that's kind of a small count. You can go probably to the next slide. The Delaware River watershed is ginormous, which parallels a lot of your work in large landscapes. It includes 4 states, and they broke the activity up into 8 targeted areas. And in those 8 targeted areas, you can see the range of different kinds of activities and work that's happening. And the Institute's job has been to be the convener and the supporter of learning across the initiative, as well as to support the collaboration in each of those 8 targeted areas. So over time, we knew meetings and connecting people was going to be really important, but we knew we needed some kind of platform or tool like Basecamp. I think we surveyed 12 different tools at the very beginning. We did a very in-depth research process. And to be able to support the 8 on-the-ground clusters, leadership groups across the top, other emerging topics like data or ag work or work on land conservation, a lot of what we needed to do was to have a platform that was pretty robust and also very, very flexible. And when it came down to that, but also I'm not a salesperson for Basecamp, but I will say I think their pricing structure is also one of the best. You pay one price and then you could use the platform as much as you want. You don't have a per user thing. So with over 300 contacts, that was kind of an important consideration for us. You can go to the next slide. In the Delaware River watershed, you can see a little bit of how we've organized it. And all the way over to the left, you can see the DRWI, or the initiative all. And that is a 300-person message thread. I personally think that's what Patrick Starr was commenting about, because that's when it gets really repetitive, when people are doing reply all. In a smaller group like this community confluence is about 15 people from across the watershed, meant to kind of weave together and think strategically about what's happening. Those kinds of reply all, I personally think, can be really useful in the message thread, because it helps keep the spirit going and it helps remind people about the dialogue and the discussion that were happening. And I would say overall with Basecamp, that's been one of the things, is like, how frequent is enough to keep the initiative in people's minds and awarenesses, and how much is too little, so that they forget about what happens in between meetings or after meetings, or just that, oh, I've got this community of people out there to look at. So some of the things that we've observed over the 7 years that we've used Basecamp is that it really took time, and I would say it took years. I think a lot of people start to use a platform and then walk away from it. And whether it's notifications or something else that gets in people's gears and makes them unhappy, it's really easy to walk away from a tool that is actually quite powerful. I'm dropping a note about notifications because as you all were working on it, I was thinking every time you add someone new to the group, especially in the early days, we did constant orientation and reorientation. And so, especially on notifications, I would say, don't be shy, take 30 seconds at a meeting and remind people about it or show them. So yeah, I think that's an ongoing sort of thing. Groups, collaborations often will start with a platform like Basecamp and think Basecamp's just gonna somehow move and work and live on its own, and that's not our experience. Tools like this work really well in combination with a rhythm of meetings and in-person discussions. People tend to use the message thread the more they know the group. And so as a collaborator, coordinator person, you have to kind of pay attention to the energy in the group and do we have enough proximity and connection with each other as people, as humans, and then look at the same with the platform and kind of watch that in dialogue. I know with the one group we use Basecamp with a lot, Dawn had maybe 4 or 5 one-on-one meetings with people as we were getting started. We used it in the meeting, just like we're showing you all now, to just help them get involved. And in the larger message board of 300, we had to like actually reach out and encourage people or remind people, hey, you got an event coming, you could actually post that to the whole initiative and sort of get going. I was looking at the traffic now, 7 years later, and there's probably at least 4 messages a week now, which is not too much. And actually, more recently, and we haven't met in person for a while, we've been seeing 2 or 3 messages a day. People are using it for a variety of things that they could get from the list, but that seeding often happens when people ask for something as opposed to tell people something. So that's another thing to keep in mind as you're using it. The smaller groups that we worked with, we intentionally used them as kind of the early adopters or the seeds to be able to show other people. And I know for a fact that some of the folks in the leadership groups then became the folks that showed their cluster or their regionally focused groups how to use Basecamp in the context of their work as well. So Delaware River Watershed Initiative, lots of experience, and it really kind of led to the way we brought things to you today as well. I think with that, I'm going to turn things back to Dawn. End of story time.
It was a good story time. Well done. All right. I heard someone asking about docs and files, attachments on threads, and how to, keep track of important documents. And this is actually Diana and my favorite part of Basecamp. It's really the best way we've found to have a central place for everyone, no matter if you're used to using Google Docs or Microsoft Office or anything in between. Everyone has one place where they can find things in a group. And you'll never be using the wrong version of the document or have to look through your browser history to remember where you put it or where you bookmarked a file that you can't find. The other great thing about it is that you can also use the comments and boosts within docs and files. So you can talk about the documents or talk about the materials just in that one place and keep everything there. So I think I shared a little bit of the why, but really just simplifying and organizing is the thing that we most like about this feature. We have another quote from Stephanie here about what she likes about docs and files. And we have another quote from Patrick too, which for the boomers in the room will maybe resonate. It's a really versatile feature. Okay, so we are going to practice together. Yeah, Connie, did you want to ask a question?
Sorry, yeah, that led to another question in my brain. Maybe it's the word boomer. But the question is really about file storage as opposed to file sharing, and when the files that you're sharing are active working documents, and whether or not, one of the things I like about Google Documents is that working documents are very clearly the latest version of whatever, it deals with version control pretty easily. So are you linking to a Google Doc, or are you just attaching? So I see Diane nodding. Maybe you can explain that more for me. Thanks.
I'd be happy to, Connie. It's actually my next slide, so it's perfect. Great question. So there's, it's very easy to add a new doc or file. You can upload it from your computer. And then if you do choose that route, there's ways to update the file and to replace it with a new version so that you can keep updating if people are making edits and keep that comment thread in the same place. But it's very simple. You can do a new doc. That's just a simple text file within Basecamp. Sometimes I'll use that for notes from meetings, or, maybe I just want a list of links in one place. I'll sometimes use that feature. It's a very simple tool. You can create a new folder and you can upload files, or you can link to files online. And that will just link to for example, Google Doc. And as you update that Google Doc, the link won't change. So in Basecamp, it'll always be whatever's the latest version of that document in Google or whichever service you're using to link to. Does that make sense? Great. Okay, so what we're going to do now is this time you're going to be in breakout rooms on your own without Diane and I, so pay attention to the instructions. When you
can come get us if you need us. We'll be here.
No, just kidding. Just kidding. We're here to help. So you're going to go into a breakout room, and when you go in there, you'll be able to see your group number in Zoom, which group you're in. So let's say you're in group 2, then you'll go into Basecamp you'll click on Docs and Files, and I'll show you how to find it. And then you're going to find your group number on the Google Doc file name. So I'm going to walk you through the steps that you're going to take in your groups now. So we're going to go back to Basecamp. Still at the notification section. You'll see this is the Docs and Files section. So we went through messages. We're now moving over one tool, Docs and Files. You'll click here. And whether you're in group 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll click on that document. And then you'll click View on Google. It's going to open a Google document, and that's where you're going to have your discussion and take notes together as a group. So you'll see it goes up into a Google document. And so you'll all open up your Google document, take notes in here, and you're done with the exercise. I mean, you're going to get a full 10 minutes for this practice. So I'll put the instructions back up, and I'm also going to drop them in the chat so that you can refer to them. And of course, if you get into your room and your mind goes blank, we're here. You can come back to the main room. We'll be happy to help.
Okay, so I think we're ready to go.
Yep.
Again, as you go into your breakout room, just note your number so that you can all be in the same document together. Have fun. Hope you enjoy the conversation too.
We'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back. How was your breakout room?
We managed to edit and add some text. And then we spent a bit of time talking about organization of documents and threads. So hopefully you're going to cover a little bit about that.
Well, say more. We can talk about it now, maybe.
So a year on, you might have dozens of threads of conversations. How do you organize those? How can you go back quickly to the thread that you need? At some point, you're going to run out of screen space to be able to see them all, right? So can you organize them into folders or files, or how do you organize that information so you can retrieve things quickly?
Do you mean within Docs and Files, or do you mean within the message board?
We talked about both within the message board. At some point you'll have 2 or 3 years out, you'd have lots of different threads, and same with documents. At some point you'll have dozens of documents in there. How do you kind of organize things so that you can find that stuff you need quickly?
Yeah. There's a couple ways. So within message threads, you can sort different types of message threads if you want to get real fancy. And you can also have different categories. So if there's certain categories that will make sense for your groups, you can do that and put them into those categories. And then that's one way to sort messages as you get a long thread. And with Docs and Files, same thing. You can have different folders, and you can even color code those folders. So for example, we could say, we want to have all of our group discussions with, oh, I saw somebody already made theirs pink. That's cool. Okay, yellow. And you can just drag your docs into those folders. So you can keep this, adjusted however you like. Does that answer your question, Lois?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Connie, did you have a question?
I do. So without cutting against the collaborative nature of this tool, we were wondering, because we were noticing that if one person in the group decides to put a document in the trash, it disappears for everyone. And, so what, if anything, can you do about, some member of your group decides to go in and clean and organize and does it, in a way that makes sense for them, but might not make sense for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you put it in the trash, it is a little hard. If you archive it, it's easy to unarchive. So it might be a matter of education. There is a way to undo the trash. But I would say that you would probably want to encourage people to archive. That said, you can also, you might have noticed here, you can see the activity of what people have done at any given point. So if somebody has gone through and drastically altered the makeup of one of your folders or your docs and files, you'll see that activity show up here. And so you might say, oh, let's undo that, and we can go in and undo. Does that answer your question?
And just to clarify, if they put a Google Doc in the trash on Basecamp, that only removes it out of Basecamp. The owner of that Google Doc would still have that Google Doc, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, we talked about that, but we just sort of recognize the potential for a lot of documents to get uploaded that might not be useful to everyone. And the potential for somebody to decide that a lot of documents aren't useful to them and inadvertently, or maybe just, purposefully take a lot of them out or put them in folders.
Yeah. And I think having a group of people, and I think this is being suggested in the chat too, of who are kind of the organizer team to keep an eye on things, is really useful. In addition to just making sure people are using it all the same way and keeping things organized.
Yeah, and like with a lot of listservs, having an administrator who keeps an eye on things, who organizes things. I don't know as much as Dawn does, but I think some of the administration rules that you can set as the Basecamp owner and administrator might help prevent some of the unneeded cleanup that people might do.
Yes. I will say in all of the different Basecamp groups I'm in, I've never encountered someone deleting files excessively. It's more adding files excessively, right? So usually it's the organization, not the like finding lost things. That's the problem. But yeah, it's good to be prepared for all things. All right, we're going to move into a tool that's arguably the most addictive of all of the Basecamp tools, which is why we saved it for one of our last items. These are pings, which are the private message feature in Basecamp. So when you would use this, or why would you use this? This is when you just want to send a little note to somebody. You want to ask them a quick question, send them a chat, send them a note that only they need to see. It's one more way to just keep all of the conversations and activity in one place and organized. The way to do it is at the very top menu, you'll see the option for pings. You can see right here, Diane's picture popped up for me, but I could also type in Katie's name and her picture popped up if I wanted to send Katie a ping. So we're going to invite you to give this a try. I'll pull up my Basecamp and show you what it looks like for the steps in a second. But we're going to invite you to share your reflections from the session. What's one thing you learned? What's one thing you want to carry forward? And if there's someone on the call who you don't know very well, we encourage you to ping them first. So I'm going to just do a quick demonstration of what it looks like. You can see that Diane's picture pops up for me because she's the person who I ping the most often, but I could pull up Connie. And if I wanted to send both Connie and Lois a message, for example, I can do that at once. So we can do small group messages. And if I send them this note, hi, it'll pop up for them, but nobody else knows that I sent that message. So go ahead and practice the pings now on your own with your reflections from the session. What's one thing you learned? What's one thing you're going to apply from what you learned today?
Dawn, can I ask a question? It's Kyra. Yeah,
Okay.
so sometimes Bill sends my favorite pinger. I'm the pingy. Bill will send our group an email to like 10 of us. And then I always got confused, like, is it best just to respond within the email or to open it up in Basecamp, or does it matter?
Oh, that's a great question. And I actually saw in our comment thread, someone on this call, I can't remember who now, practiced replying to the comment thread through their email. So if that was you, give a shout. I'm giving you a shout. It was Linda. Great. So Linda, instead of going into Basecamp and clicking on comment, saw that the message came through on email and hit reply on email, and it popped up as a comment. So you can actually choose which one works for you. Both have the same functionality, and I can show you what that looks like here. Switchboard. I think it was in the introductions. Yeah, there's Linda's replying via email. And so you can see that the email signature popped up too. But that's really the only thing that distinguishes this message, this comment from any of the other comments. We wouldn't have any idea if she hadn't told us.
So Dawn, where do you want us to do what?
Great question, Bill. So now you're going to go and find someone in this call or a group of people on this call, ping them a reflection. What's one thing new that you learned, and what's one way you're going to carry your learning forward? Okay, I'm going to invite you to pull yourself away from your pings. And if you want to unmute and share, did any of the reflections stick out to you? Since none of us can see your private messages as pings, can you share with the group a reflection or two? You can go ahead and unmute and speak up. We can just popcorn it. I told you it was addictive.
Well, it seems that the big advantage of Basecamp is it's both a communications and a workspace platform. And I guess, checking in with my co-coordinator of my partnership and see about, some sort of buy-in from core partners would be key to if we wanted to move it forward.
Yeah, I hear that. It's a useful tool, and if you don't have the right people using it actively, it's less useful. Right? Anyone else want to share a reflection? Can probably take two more.
Sorry, can you ping two people at the same time?
Yeah, you can create little ping groups. I think when I was doing it, I added two names and then sent them both a message. It's, like a group chat or group message. Anyone else want to share?
I'm just curious, is there anyone on the call that doesn't use group text messages at some aspect of your life? Been hysterical for me to watch my wife and her 5 siblings pick up text messaging as a way to stay in touch with each other in a light touch way. It's kind of sweet. And the message board could be that same sort of thing for you as coordinators across the network. But you can also, like, if you know people are on Basecamp, then pinging them there is easier than sending an email sometimes.
Diane, I think you're going to close us out with some reflections and recommendations from our side.
Yeah, I want to say, Dawn and I were just thrilled that the Highstead Foundation invited us in to do this. It's been something we've intended to do for a while, and it was a lot of fun to think about how to make the session really interactive and give you a chance to really get into the tool. The Highstead Foundation's intention is to start by using this with the RCP network as the main form of communication. And Bill, you can come off mute if I'm saying anything wrong, like you really want to transfer things over to Basecamp if you can.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not. Our intention was to utilize Basecamp as a way, as you mentioned in the beginning, to take the bottleneck of, say, myself and Katie or anybody else in the coordination function out of it, so that RCP coordinators can communicate with each other, share lessons, resources, things like that. So at the very least, RCP coordinators and leaders can use Basecamp, and then if individual RCPs want to use Basecamp for their own partnership, we can set that up as well.
Yeah, and so because this session includes staff at Highstead who are going to be implementing Basecamp over time, and I can hear some of you are starting to wonder, could I use this with my RCP network? Dawn and I just wanted to close with some of the things that we've learned about leadership and leading people to adopt a new tool. It may be one of the bigger challenges in leadership. So we'll open with another quote. This is Laura Tesseri, who does a lot of work in ag with the North Jersey RC&D. She's incredibly busy executive director. And I think this is a really good first thing, is really encourage people to use the app. It's so much more friendly. We haven't said it, but you can use it on your computer. I also have it on my phone, which is super helpful when I'm on the road, because I can either turn the notifications on or off on my phone and pay attention to things when they're hot. So Dawn and I do a lot of project work together, and we've agreed we mostly communicate by ping with each other. We have a new big project right now. We mostly communicate with our principal collaborator at the organization by ping. And it's really streamlined our work. But because it's on the app, I have access to it while I'm working on other docs. It's in the tray at the bottom. I don't have to go to and open a browser. It's just really there. So that's our first encouragement for adaptation over time. Second slide is, like, if you're going to use Basecamp, and I think we've already said this to Bill and Katie as we've been working on it, don't give people the option of emailing anymore. Like, just like we did with this workshop, we're going to get through Basecamp to get ready for the workshop. At least that was our intention. And it's a little bit of like cold turkey. And I would say in DRWI, we still do a few things by email, but very rarely. And it's only when we really need to get somebody's attention that we do it that way. The small group messages, especially for activities, are amazing. And Dawn's other point about declutter your Basecamp place and take tools that you're not using, like there's 6 that she showed you take those other things off. You can hide them. It just makes it easier to go in and find things and access it. Create some protocols with each other about how you're going to do meeting notes, how you're going to label them. Are you going to do them as just a document that lives on Basecamp or a separate kind of document? And then in DRWI, as an example, we set things up initially to put things in Basecamp before we started groups up, so that things would be there, including a welcome to Basecamp doc and file, where people have Q&A and other things, recordings and pieces that they can use to learn more. So closing, I'll just say, another one of the quotes we got from one of the leaders just really emphasizes this. I think with a new tool, people think like you just drop it in and you're good to go and everybody's going to learn it. And I think what we found is training little bit by little bit in meetings. Don't worry about being repetitive. Do webinars and workshops to just like step people through and have them get in there and ask. Be able to ask questions. Like all of that is part of training. It's not just showing people, but it's helping them step through things. And as I mentioned, Dawn spent one-on-one time with people, and we really made that a priority for this one group that created a 40-page document together from you know, set of people who were super busy. So I think with that and some ideas about how to help lead adoption, we are just going to close and thank you all for being, you know, willing, engagement all the way through. And Dawn and I will be on the Basecamp platform. If you have questions, you can ping us there. We will be responsive. If you want to start a message thread about a particular question that you have, that workspace is going to be there for a bit. And we pledge to continue to pay attention to it if you have follow-up questions. So I think
Thanks
that's
so
it.
much
Dawn,
for
do you
your
want to
time.
add anything?
Just thanks so much for your great questions, great engagement. Just know we're here to answer questions for the next little bit as you need it. Thank you.